Hola, people. Hey, witches.
Hello.
So, tonight's topic is going to be really fun. We're going to talk about the power of magic, magic being everywhere, all around us, and how to tap into that influence and how to utilize the magic of sacred space and nature and our surroundings wherever we are. We're also going to be talking about, we just discovered this like a few seconds ago, circles, circle work, um, casting circles, what they mean, the discussion of seeing a circle as like a sphere to contain energy versus an actual legit just a circle, no sphere at all, and different things centered around that. So let's get started. I think like our first expression, what we should talk about first would be like magic being everywhere and what that means and how we can benefit from it, and as a witch how we utilize it. What do you think, Miss Melissa?
Well, honestly, whenever I first was talking to Michael about this topic, it's really strange because I'd written it down in a little memo section of my phone, and I'm like, I don't even remember writing this. So, but when I first started out, I felt like everything had to be perfect in order to cast. You know what I mean? I had to have my altars in a specific place, cleanse everything. It has to be the sacred space. Don't come into my sacred space, y'all. Like at the time I had a toddler, and I was like, no, no, we got to put her to bed. I can't cast while she's running around. She's gonna be in my sacred space. It was a very limiting way to think at the time, but it made a lot at the time. I thought that's the way it had to be. And I don't know if it's like a purposeful thing, but some authors are very particular when it comes to where you should cast. And as I got out of that phase and realized that, hey, I can tap into magic anywhere I'm at. I could be in the middle of Walmart. I have been in the middle of Walmart and cast because, mainly because I was grounding people around me because the energy was so frenzied and crazy. But you could be anywhere, middle of Walmart, eating, at a restaurant, in the park, out in nature is one of my favorite places to cast. Anywhere, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a set thing. It doesn't have to. You don't have to carry around your Florida water and and cleanse that space. If you're out in nature, for sure, then nature stuff's not going to appreciate that Florida water. So, and it took a while for me to really grasp that. And again, like I said, it may not be purposeful, but a lot of the reason why is because that's the way you would read it in books. And regardless of whether it's witchcraft book or Wicca book, all of them seem to talk the same as far as, oh, you have to, be in a specific setting. You have to have things a certain way. And I realized, that's not really true. You can be anywhere because energy is everywhere.
Right. I like that, and that's so true. Let me fix this shit. Hello. Okay, so yeah, and I like that, and magic being everywhere. If we really contemplate it, I know we've sort of talked about this in other shows briefly, but energy is energy, and we are sacred, and our connection to our sacred essence is everywhere. And as witches, we practice with our natural realms, nature and everything, and so if that is everywhere. We are constantly surrounded by that. Even in the environment in where I'm at or where you're at, it's energy. These are creations. So at its core, magic, energy, essence, it's all around us and it's within us. So no matter where you go, you sort of create your own sacred space and you realign and you reattune, to the situation that you're in, the space that you're in, you start to feel differently. And you know, like whenever you go into a different room, a different environment, your body starts to adjust. It prepares you even before you enter it for the type of energy that you're walking into. And this happens a lot in nature too, and sometimes even more intense when you go into like secluded areas out in nature. And you're like, oh wow, that feels like untouched. That feels very distinct, very raw, very primal, very special. And so your body prepares you for that. You're like, oh, this is pretty cool. So we sort of naturally attune to the magic and the energy of wherever we are. We just have to remember, we have to remind ourselves of that, remember that, and consciously be aware of it. So when we need to cast, we don't have to like figure out like a quick circle to cast or a quick thing to do in order to prepare to cast. We can sort of bring the energy around us and run it through us and connect with all that's flowing, you know, within and around, and cast, because we honor the fact that this is all sacred and magic is sacred, and it's at our disposal, you know.
Exactly. You know, wherever you are, magic is there. And it's like Michael said, you know, we make that space sacred. It's not necessarily the items we use that make it sacred. You know, and please don't misunderstand. We are totally not knocking tools. If we all have watched any of our shows, you know we are firm believers in using herbs, crystals, and other tools. But it still doesn't negate the fact that we ourselves are sacred. And when we go into another space, we can make that sacred simply by being there.
Right, and the interesting thing about that, and this can, we'll save that for another time, but I just want to comment is like understanding that, you know, magic is everywhere. This is sacredness. When you have that understanding, you believe it, and you follow through with it, that's sort of the essence, the energy that creates the tool to be even more potent. So as you practice, as you utilize the tool often and over, you understand that there's this essence flowing through it, that conscious acknowledgement creates even more power. So when you use a tool, you're aligning with all is sacred, magic is everywhere. This is a part of the magic that we tapped into, and it's connecting me and it's fueling me for the work that we're gonna do.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I like that idea. Yeah, we'll have to explore that in another discussion.
We should for sure.
Road.
I know. So yeah, and you know, it's fun to realize and contemplate the concept and the perception expression that magic is everything. You know, especially as a magical practitioner, you know, we work in environments that everything that we do, everything, every person, every situation that we engage with, um, is as that magical individual, as for me, as witch. And so your response and your action is going to be slightly from a magical perspective. And so we have to honor that, and we have to realize, like, you know, it's everywhere, it's in everything that we do. And the more that we, again, acknowledge it and understand it, the more that we can do. You know, a lot of people say they'll make a wish in their head when they're talking to someone, like they're just leave, but they don't say it because they don't want to be rude, but then they leave, you know. And that's like, and that's understanding the flow of magic and understanding the process of thought patterns and telepathy and all that. It's at our disposal, it's everywhere, and I'm going to keep saying that, repeating myself, but that's the beauty of it. We take all this shit for granted, and we shouldn't. We should acknowledge it ever so often. We should honor it because it's pretty fucking cool.
It really is, and you know, and it wouldn't hurt, like you said, to just acknowledge it sort of randomly. You know, I can't tell you how many times I walked into an area where I would not have expected to have like that gut pull. You know, that sort of takes your breath away, and you're like, "Wow, what's that?" I felt that, what's that? And it always is a really pleasant surprise. Well, when it's a good feeling. Sometimes it's not a so good feeling. That's a whole
Right.
different story. But it's a good feeling, and it hits you in the middle of, like, a pizza place, or one of the places I felt it a lot, and it always catches me off guard even though it really shouldn't, is there's a nail place in town, and they have an altar, to Buddha, in like the middle of their business. Not a lot of people see it. It's not really out in the open. And every time I walk into that nail place, and you would not think that nail technician, business would make you feel like that. But their belief, I believe, is the reason why. It's so strong, and they give offerings on, regular to this altar, to Buddha. You walk in, and it just hits you like in the gut and in the heart. You just feel
Right.
it, and it always catches me off guard, and it's a really amazing feeling.
Right.
You can feel this spirituality and this really just magical essence. It's kind of like you just walked into this ball of concentrated magic, and it's interesting to experience, and it's even, to me, more interesting to explore and just kind of reach out with your psychic feelers every once in a while in a place you wouldn't expect to find it, and see how it feels. You know,
Right.
hit those vibes and see what you think, and you'll be surprised. I think a lot of times at what you find in different places.
Right. And to sort of go with what you expressed, if you and this is like unfortunate because a lot of times like where car accidents are, people put up little shrines, and that's actually a magical essence in a sense, because you have this accident that happened, death occurred, possibly, usually when they put up shrines, death happened. So you have that death energy, but then you have the people who come to mourn, and then after a while it goes from mourning to honoring, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
like you have this remembrance, you have death, you have rebirth, and you have remembrance of the individuals or the situation. And as time goes by, even people who drive by who don't know what happened, they see that and they're like, oh, it makes you think. It doesn't necessarily make you think about like that accident, but it makes you think of death and what could have happened. So there's power there, and it's like it's generating power. The more that we invest into it, the more we drive by, we see it, we acknowledge it. So there are things in our everyday world that have influence, especially like that are like almost uh, portals or energy generators, and that's magic.
Right,
Right there.
exactly. Exactly. Another place that comes to mind is like places where there's a lot of graffiti, whether it's good graffiti or bad graffiti. Walking about places like that, you feel the energy that this person or multiple people have put into that space. Whether you like the art or you don't like the art, maybe it's just a bunch of names scrawled across, whatever, still you feel the energy. It's something, the art catches your eye, obviously, any kind of bright colors is going to catch your eye, but you feel it. You feel the emotion, when someone has written "fuck you" or "screw the government" or "anarchy" or whatever, you feel that emotion. And a lot of times it can be kind of crazy, but sometimes it's just like passion. That's all it
Yeah.
is. It's
Yeah.
passion. And to me, it's really intriguing whenever I go past places like that, or walk past any beautiful, street art, and it just kind of grips you. Even if you don't even realize it's there, and all of a sudden you turn and it's like this beautiful mural that someone did just with spray paint, and it catches you, and you just, oh my gosh, that's so powerful. And even mundanes pick up on it. It's not just magical people, mundanes can pick up on things like that. And it's fascinating to me because magic truly is everywhere. And you find these places of intense gatherings of emotions, and that just makes it even more interesting.
Right, and that shows you the potency, before we move on to circles, but that shows you the potency of these spots. It's everywhere, but there are certain spots where a little more they're focused. So it shows you the potency of them because it influences mundanes, and you will see a mundane individual who maybe they're really, really grumpy all the time. And then they experience like a graffiti piece. And normally that would make them like, be crotchety. But they see it and they're moved by it, and the spirit almost takes over, and they appreciate it, or they act out of norm. And I see that a lot with people when they experience graffiti. Sometimes it makes them angry, like you said, and sometimes it makes them happy, or you feel passion. So it's very interesting to see people who don't normally get moved by such things, but when they're in that essence, when they're in that the vicinity of the artwork, the art form, the casting, whatever you want to call it, they shift, they change. So for it to influence like mundane individuals, it shows you how powerful that these places and these pieces can be. So yeah, we would like to know, what your thoughts are on, magic being everywhere. What does that mean to you? Do you agree? Do you not agree? And how do you perceive that? And, let us know. Comment down below, and let us know. Let us know what your thoughts are, and let's have a discussion, because that's going to be fun. It'll be fun to see what your perceptions are. But yeah, let us know, and let's talk about circles. We haven't talked about circles in a little bit. I was having a conversation with my friend Kevin. He used to run, what was it, Ramblings or Rantings of a Male Witch. Very opinionated individual, but we're talking about circles. I can't remember how the conversation started, but it inspired me, and it started to trigger different thought processes and patterns and ideas. And so let's talk about circles and what goes with that. Miss Melissa, what are your thoughts on circles?
Well, circles and I have I have an interesting history. Personally, like as of right now, I really don't use them that much, hardly at all. Because whenever I started out, you would read, cast a circle, and it picture in your mind a sphere. So that's what I would do. Cast a circle, picture the sphere. And I would almost die of heat exhaustion. Like I would get suffocated, and it just felt so constricting and so, ugh. I was like, I don't know that I can do this. And so it turned me off to the point where honestly I never really picked it back up, even though later on I would read that, okay, that necessarily wasn't the right way. Or I would read about different ways, as far as, like Michael mentioned in the intro earlier, casting as an actual just a circle, more of a cylinder, idea than a sphere. So it's open at the top, and things can get out, and you can pull things in, but nothing can come at you. You know, believe it or not, Silver Ravenwolf is really awesome when she describes circles. That's how she describes them. They are a protection. They're boundaries, and they're not meant to hold it in, because I never understood, how is my magic going to get out if I'm holding it all in? So to me, of course, by this time I was already like so against circles in general. Whenever I would read her stuff about it, I was like, okay, that's an interesting concept, but I never really put it into action. So, it's something I will have to start doing again with a better and or maybe I should say a newer perspective, and a different beginning.
Right. That's interesting though, because like for me it was almost kind of reversed, because when I first started practicing, when I cast a circle, I cast like a circle. It wasn't a sphere. And when I cast a circle, I'm like, okay, this feels right. Cool. Well, it was just natural for me to do that. And some of the sources that I did pick up on, they explained it as like a circle, and that's how I interpreted it. At least they didn't really mention sphere. So the more that I got money, the more I bought books. The more books that I read, they're like a lot of the books were expressing a sphere, and I'm like, maybe I'm doing it wrong. And it was when I was really new, and so the first time I cast a sphere, it drained me. Like I felt the energy like raise, and it had nowhere to go. And the minute I released that circle, like I fell to the ground, like all the energy just like boom, it left. Like it just boom, gone, and I felt depleted. And it was a rush, of course, because it's almost like when you try and blow up a balloon or something, and you just like you have that lightheaded high feeling if you keep going and going, and you're like, whatever. You get that lightheaded, airy high, and it was like that. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. But I didn't like the feeling because like I don't like feeling without energy. I enjoyed my circle the way I originally did it, and I could never comprehend when you have the sphere. To me, it's like, okay, you're blocking everything. So yeah, I understand that individuals were saying, well, you're just saving the power, saving the energy. So when you open it, you release it. I'm like, well, why would I need to release it if I'm constantly connected? So as I'm casting, as I'm creating, I'm connected to the source. I'm connected to my working. It's going to be where it's supposed to be. Like, what if you contain it so much, you're burning it. Like, you're burning the working, you're burning it out. And not only are you burning the magic, or just having more of a chance that it's going to deplete, but you also face the chance of like spiritual burnout. And things just didn't make sense to me, and viewing it as a sphere, like I have issues like with breathing. Like I get weird. Like I have to be able to breathe. I just have to, and sometimes I just can't, and I just know. So having a sphere and feeling that energy, I can't breathe. And if I can't breathe, I can't focus. I can't get anything done. So it just never made sense to do it that way. And the more I think about it, the conversation that I was having with Kevin, I would consider trying again as an actual circle, because when you think about it, when you have an actual circle, everything around you is protected. Mm-hmm. You're keeping all that shit out, but you're making sure you have direct access to the cosmos and the underworld and the center of Earth. So those influences, you're making sure you have direct access. You're not cutting shit off. You're not cutting the flow of energy off. So to me, I can breathe contemplating and working that versus a sphere.
Right, yeah, and honestly, and that protection works two ways too. I mean, you are protected from outside influences, but let's say you are in the middle of your small house and you're casting, something that may not be great if your family member is in their area and it's sort of like a wild, crazy thing. You're protecting them too, because it's going to stay in those specific areas. It can go up, it can go down, but it's not necessarily going to sweep someone off their feet that's walking, around it. It's, on the outside. So that protection works both ways, and it is an interesting, concept when you view it like that. Before, with the whole sphere thing, I don't know, that really messed with my mind, y'all.
It really messes with mine too. Like, I mean, it does, because I guess for me, and not everyone's going to view it the same way, which is cool, but the way my mind works and the way like I process that information, I'm like, I don't know. Like I as a witch, as a practitioner, when I'm casting, I need to feel connected and fluid. If I have something, even it's a sphere of energy that I cast around me, it cuts off everything. Like it's protecting you from everything. You're not really allowing, because, and then if you contemplate it, I guess, when they say, well, you can cut a bubble open, you can cut it open, go through it to get out, make sure to seal it, then go back through. If you have to do that to get out of your circle, your sphere, then how are you getting energy from the center of the earth, and how are you contacting things to come through?
Right.
Like how are you?
Getting out. Obviously, I guess if you open it up, then it'll get out. But I don't know. To me, I release magic on the upswing. You know what I mean? Once the energy is built up, and then it's a release, sort of like a climax. I don't see the point in building all the energy up and then coming down enough to take down the sphere and then releasing it. To me, that's kind of weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so it's interesting, So I definitely consider working with circles, and the mindset of it's a circle and not a sphere. And so let's talk about a little bit about, because what Kevin was saying was, people have very specific and very distinct opinions, and they're very passionate about it, which is pretty cool. It's good to be passionate about your craft and your stuff, but sometimes passion can limit you from opening your mind to other possibilities. But a lot of people say when you're casting a circle, you need to bring in all elements. And to me, that if you're not, I can see that, I guess, for like a full-on ritual, but not for every casting or every working you need to do, because you might not need certain elements, their influence. You have what? You have water, you have fire. Those two influences, those two energies can neutralize each other. Water can put out fire. So if you need something and you're working with those, let's say you need a lot of fire energy, you need that passion, you need that aggression, you need that inspiration, and that very raw, primal essence. You need a lot of that, because what you're doing is you're enchanting something for love and lust, and bringing a relationship together. You want that fire there. Well, if you bring in water, a lot of water, you can kind of drown out that fire. You can drown out that passion. You can bring in too much emotional baggage, emotional bullshit, like a lot of like just water shit, and it's not necessary, because if you bring all of that in, you neutralize it.
Right, right. Hmm.
And then you have like conflicting energies in your sphere. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is so crazy to me. Like, if you have all those energies like combating to be in this sphere, this small sphere or whatever, that is like too much. You're running all this energy through you, and it's going through you. It's going your, so it's like it has nowhere to go. Whereas if it had somewhere to go, it would be flowing through you or flowing in your place, but it had its own breathing room.
Right, exactly. To me, that sounds claustrophobic as fuck.
I
You
know.
know, having all that shit in there. And also, to me, whenever you're calling upon the elements, as in like capital letter elements, that's like the representation of the element. That is an elemental. That is it's the same thing as calling on a deity in my beliefs. You
Right,
know,
right.
you invite the element of fire in its representation as the whole of fire. That's calling in the big dogs. I mean, I'm not going to do that unless it's something big. You
Right.
know, because to me that's almost disrespectful to be like, "Hey, fire, come here. I need to, cleanse this tarot deck." No, that to me is not something I'm gonna call on fire for. I mean, and I'm very. I don't think I've ever called upon all the elements at the same time, even in ritual, just because I'm not comfortable with that. To me, it's kind of like Michael said, and we were talking before the show. Even it's like you neutralize everything out. You know,
Right.
so I don't know. I've never been very comfortable with that. And the only time I've ever called on an element to be present in my casting, it was big stuff. It was not a small spell. It was a major, like, life-changing spell.
Right.
So, I'm just not comfortable with that. I can see calling on the guardians, the watchtower guardians, stuff like that, because guardians are meant to guard. That is literally their purpose. So when you call upon them to like guard you, especially if I was like trying to summon a demon or something like that, if I was messing around with big power, yeah, I would call on them, and I would feel comfortable with calling on all of them at the same time, because each one of them has a different duty in different sections of the circle. If I was in a sphere, I would probably be scared as fuck because I'd have all those guardians right up next to me, and their power is something major. So
Right.
it would nerve me out. I wouldn't be able to get a word out.
Right.
So yeah, I just to me that's a big power, and I only call on big power when I'm comfortable with it, for one thing,
Right.
and
Right.
where I feel it's really necessary. Because when you call on something that major and it's for podunk little stuff, eventually they don't take you seriously, they don't respect you, and they're not going to show up when you need them for real.
Right.
That's my
And whatever your belief is, if you do choose to work with the elementals really, that's cool. And if you bring them into your practice often, that's cool. You have a great relationship with them. But that is interesting, because if you see elementals, if you see them as personalities, individuals, they are like the embodiment of that element's traits, that element's personalities. So they
right.
are all fucking divas in a sense. They're very divas in their own right. This is the diva of air. This is the diva of fire. This is the diva of earth and water. So you have these very big expressions of power, of influence, of energy. So if you think about it, like if you bring them all into your circle at once, you better make sure you are all in full and complete alignment on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because if you have one of them out of alignment, out of sync, then that overbearing power, or even under, like it might not be as intense, that can influence the working, that can make something, that can shift your spell and make things go slightly wonky. So that's something to take into consideration. A lot of people just I made the mistake, as a wee witch, um, of doing that as well, because I'm like, okay, well, this is what people are saying. This is what the people in the know are saying. I need to do this, this, and this. This is the outline I have to follow, and so I did. And so, oops, shit happens.
Right.
Whoops. You learn from your experiences. I'm not going to say mistakes, because they're experiences and they're very enlightening. You get burned, you lose a limb, who knows?
Might get
But
slapped a little bit.
and these, as you grow in your craft, as you grow in experience, you start to like contemplate, and that's kind of like what we, the beauty and the blessing of what we do here is we have sort of been through a lot of these things. We've been practicing for a long time, and so we can now look back and say, well, what would have I can't even talk, y'all. What would I have done differently? How would I have altered this? Or what would I want to know back then? What didn't I know that I should have known, or that I that would have made my experience better? So we think about all this stuff as we express it to you, and that's why we share a lot of these things, because like, oh, well, that would have been beneficial to me then, so I'm going to share it now so other people can contemplate and think as well, and maybe they will be blessed for it, or maybe they will use it. So yeah, think of the again, off topic, but think of the elements as personalities, very distinct and big personalities, and you wouldn't want all of them around at the same time. Especially, let's say you want to use water, and you invited all of them in, but your focal point is water. you got all the other divas behind you being like, water's not doing such a good job over here, huh? There, so you have that energy play, you have that essence to really take into consideration that maybe I will just bring water in, and maybe if I want to make sure water's on point, I will bring fire in, but I have to make sure that I don't bring as much fire in, just a little bit, enough to say we got to work together. Fire's here; it can keep you in line, in a sense.
Right, yeah, exactly. And and it is interesting to me, and it seems like, I swear I've read that. I can't even remember now where. It was one of the few books I believe I ever read in the beginning that actually discouraged people from calling on all the elements at one time. And I wish now I can remember what it was, and maybe it was a discussion and not a book. Y'all, it's a long time ago. So, but yeah, and to me, when you think about it, like Michael said, as divas, almost, really almost deities in their own right. Um, they they can mess you up if you don't respect them in the right way, and honestly, y'all, even if you just, like, to me, if I was doing something that required a lot of water energy, like Michael was talking about, and I called water the water diva into my circle, in order to kind of counteract if I felt like water was an overbearing personality, and she can be sometimes, because you think about it, water can be very destructive. So I would have a decent fire representation with me. Maybe not necessarily call upon fire, but maybe even if it was in the middle of the day, have a really good fire going,
Right.
center of my circle, to kind of counteract that, and balance those overpowering energies. So there's so many ways you can go about it, but honestly, and this is just speaking from my experience, and of course Michael speaking from his, I have very rarely run into any experience where I'm going to need all of the elements. And the few times I've tried that in the beginning, kind of got, my ass chewed out, bitch slapped a little bit, because, like, what are you doing? You don't even know who we are. How are you calling upon us? It's kind of like calling upon a deity that you don't really know. You can get a similar reaction. It's like, who the hell are you, and why do you think you can call me out? So not to say that that's always the experience with every deity. Some deities are totally cool, if you call on them and don't really know them, but that's kind of a rarity, at least in my experience.
Right.
So, yeah, it's always something to be careful of. Whereas, like, guardians, calling the guardians and watchtowers in, those guys, not near as, like, easily insulted.
Right. Well, and I think because, like, if you think about it, like, elemental beings, elements are more like they're close, like, in the filtering of energies, they are closer to us.
Right.
So, you have that personality, you have more individual essence, you have a lot of
influence them as much as they influence us, in a way.
Right. So, yeah, whereas, like, guardians and such, they're a little higher in a sense, like, they see more, and so they're a little more detached. Mm-hmm. They invest and they can work, but they're a little more detached and they discern better. So that's interesting to say. You can also, like, when you're working with spirit, if you are communicating with the dead, if you call the dead to you, you can cast a circle around you, create that circle, and then cast a circle around the individual or the energy that you're calling, so you don't share that circle, you don't share that space. You are in your own space, and what you're calling has its own space. So you protect yourself, again, in a smart way. Right. That's very important. And, Melissa was saying that before we started the show. And, that's another way to benefit from circle work. You say it a little fast, it sounds like something else, and I'm like,
right.
That's not the kind of show we're talking about tonight, y'all.
But yeah, and and even if, like, let's say you are new to channeling, if because everyone's new at some point, and you don't, you want to start, making these experiences and having these experiences channeling, a circle is a good way to protect yourself, to where only the thing that, or the person or the spirit or the being that you want to channel is allowed in. That way, if you're not necessarily doing it right, because I know for me, that's usually the case in the first few tries, no matter what it is I do. But if you're not necessarily doing it right, that keeps you safe from being taken over by something else. So that's really beneficial in my
Yeah,
mind for
absolutely.
things like that as well.
And who would have thought, y'all, the deviants are talking about circles and actually suggesting to work with them in a very distinct way, not a sphere, not a spherical expression, but an actual circle. But that's so true because when you are channeling, when you're creating that information and you're creating that link, especially again, like you said, just starting out, when you don't necessarily have that experience, the discernment, it's important. You can utilize a circle to again create that barrier. You're not just protecting the outside, you're protecting the inside, you're protecting yourself and other people possibly from you, depending on the information, the person, if you full body channel, shit gets crazy. So it's good to have that distinct spot for the work that you do.
Right. And the great thing about circles is you can, again, to kind of tie it into what we were talking about earlier, you can cast them anywhere and everywhere. I mean, they're super easy to cast. You do not need anything. Or, honestly, you can pick crap up off the ground. If you feel like you need some dirt to make that circle, you just grab some dirt off the ground. There you go. Sprinkle it around you. Good. Circle. There's so many. And again, like Silver Ravenwolf has some amazing different ideas for circles. So if you are wanting to spruce up your circle work or do something circle work or do something different, just to be creative. Oh my gosh, I wish I could remember. Do you remember which book it was? Because there's one book, I swear,
It's
half the book about it.
it is like half the book is circles. I think it's Sister a Magic Cauldron.
I think you're right. I think you're right. But yeah, it is no joke. Like half the book is about circles, and there are so many creative ways to cast them, and I really enjoy a lot of the ways she uses them. So as far as especially her, the creative aspects. So that would be something fun and interesting to check out if you haven't.
Absolutely. And if y'all like, if you have any questions, if you want to start a discussion with us, comment, let us know what you think about circles. And have you noticed, like, when you cast, like, if you've ever cast just an actual a circle and not a sphere, how does that feel to you versus casting a sphere? And let us know your thoughts. Like, we would enjoy hearing what your perceptions are. And, if you do a sphere and if that works for you and you invite all the elementals in, that's awesome. Let us know, your experiences. If you're willing to share, tell us like how it works for you, why it works for you, because we're all about understanding and trying to figure out like we know why it doesn't work for us, and if it works for you, I want to hear it so I can understand like, okay, if I come across someone who might need that information, I can explain it to them better, and then I just have a better understanding of how people work and how it might benefit them and not me. So I would love to know how you make it work, and if you ever thought about it where the sphere is like limiting, where an actual circle without the top and bottom, it's not a sphere, where that's not as limiting. Or if you think an actual circle like that is limiting, I'm asking so many questions, y'all, sorry. Why do you think it's limiting?
Yes, and if you'd rather make, like, if you're super inspired and you want to do a video response, please do. We would love to see it. Make sure you, like, let us know, send us a link, tag us, whatever. But yeah, we would really, really like to know, because it's really fascinating to me. And both Michael and I sort of shared our horror stories involving circles and why we are just not big fans. But, that's the wonderful thing about sharing and communicating with each other is, you might have a way of doing things that enlightens us so that
Right.
we, oh my gosh, we should totally try that. And we are also, trying to be a little bit more open about it.
Right,
You know,
right.
for our traumatic experiences.
Exactly. Like we will. Like if you explain it to us and you know if it clicks with us, we are totally open to trying things, again and from a new perspective with more awareness. Yeah, we're definitely open to that. We do have a little bit of a news, a little bit of announcement to make, I guess, because Samhain is coming. The cooler months are coming, and a lot of things are happening. Changes obviously here, and we seek to create change. We have decided, as Deviant Witchery, we're going to take a sort of little vacation. We're taking a slight break from creating as many videos as we've been creating every Saturday, every other Wednesday, um, just so we can take some time, invest and be inspired and take time with our families and just enjoy the shifting of the seasons. You will still receive, a video here and there, and but yeah, we won't be doing as many for a little while, so we can recharge, regroup, and have fun, but also create behind the scenes, and brainstorm and come back with more inspiration for you.
Right, because I think Michael, how many said we've done 182 videos since Deviant Witchery's conception, and that's a lot of videos, guys. And after you've done so many, you feel like you've talked about the same stuff, no matter what it is. It's like, haven't we every conversation just about at this point? We're like, haven't we discussed that before? It does. It gets a little challenging. So this will give us an opportunity to kind of step back, look over what we have done, and come up with new and exciting things so y'all don't get bored and we don't get bored and things have this nice, fresh, squeaky, clean, new feeling.
Absolutely. So again, y'all, we appreciate you. We thank you for your time and your investment, because when you watch and that inspires us. We know that if you can take something from anything that we say, we love that. We enjoy sharing. We enjoy giving back, and we enjoy being of service and helping. That's kind of the mission. That's what we desire to do here at Deviant Witchery, is just where a witch can be a witch, and being who we are and creating a safe place for witches to be able to talk about whatever they desire to talk about. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to continue to do. Yeah, comment on our video. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you have anything to add to the discussion, or anything that you'd like to talk about. Take advantage. Comment. Let us know.
Yes.
But until next time, y'all, we will talk to you later. Peace.
Bye.